All right, cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show or back on the show.
Yeah, it's been a good minute.
It's been a while. Probably for good reason. I mean, I think the stuff that's been going on in the world, it hasn't stopped, but um things kind of mellowed out for a minute. We had other shit to kind of to look at, but
Yeah.
obviously what's going on in the world right now, and tensions are high, so things just kind of came up. But
Mhm.
before we get into all of that, do you really quickly want to introduce yourself and let our
Uh-huh.
listeners know who you are and what do you do in your own words?
Well, my name's Nikki Archuleta. I am a Black Lives Matter organizer and activist. On top of
Mhm.
that, um, just, a humanitarian. I think like the
Okay.
value of life is important. So
Yeah.
advocating for marginalized groups of people.
Yeah, I mean that's an important thing. Whatever group it is, right? I
Yeah.
know that you have a diverse background as well, so that I think
Mhm.
that's kind of something to keep in mind. But this has kind of become your kind of your baby here in Albuquerque, no?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah, I actually got kind of emotional yesterday, like just within talking about it, because
Hmm.
unfortunately, like I do feel like when it comes to Black folks specifically in New Mexico, we're people try to put us on a very like micro in a very micro like space. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, so I feel like it's been a lot of work, and
Hmm.
it's been I definitely have support and things like that, but like the work has just been really rough, and I'm like, it's weird because I like honestly don't know how to feel about a lot of things right now. I think I'm just so emotional about everything at the
Hmm.
moment that I just haven't had the time to even like process what's going on and like what exactly is happening, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely been interesting, and this started a while, when I realized that like if I want something done, I'm definitely going to have to do it myself, because
Mm.
unfortunately, a lot of people's priority, it's not Black people, it's not our issues, it's not like what
Yeah.
we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And obviously I want to say that there are some groups that definitely, like the Red Nation, who have always been allies and supportive and things like that. So there are groups out there that do want to highlight those platforms for Black people, but for the most part, like it's really hard. It's really hard to have those resources, especially when people think like the Black community out here is non-existent, right? There is a
Mm.
Black community out here. It's not like in the same sense of like demographics for like Chicago, right? Like,
Right. Right.
but it exists, and we do experience trauma and violence in and anti-Blackness in New Mexico
Yeah.
and in Albuquerque. So yeah, it's definitely been a bit a tough road,
Uh-huh.
but we're here. So
I mean, yeah, it's been a tough road. There is that myth that there isn't as many Black people, or there aren't many in New Mexico or in Albuquerque. There's a
yeah,
history of them here. I mean, going back to the early days, before Albuquerque.
yeah,
I mean, New Mexico was a state even, but it's I think a big influx kind of came in after I think Katrina. There was a
mm,
big kind of influx as well, and there was already people who were here. But for some reason, there's that weird myth, and yeah, they face discrimination, in
yeah,
many different ways, especially here in Albuquerque. Because I think a lot of the time we believe that because it's a minority majority state,
yeah,
right? People are just like, oh, we're fine here, but that's not necessarily that's not the case, right? Just because it's minority majority, that doesn't mean that everything there's equity, or that everyone has that there's no discrimination, right? I
yeah.
mean, New Mexican Hispanics don't like Mexicans and I'm Mexican, so right, so
Oh
like
my
that's a
gosh,
whole other
it's such a
thing.
mess. Yeah, it's such a mess.
Yeah,
The politics of just like the politics.
identification. Yeah.
Yeah, like identifying and like just culturally, like it's just kind of like it's like a whole load of crap, and I hate that that's like the conversation, like amongst dealing with like this
There's like
really,
this infighting. Yeah.
yeah, it's like on top of like already advocating for ourselves and dealing with these like really like crazy evil entities like white supremacy and things like that. We're
Yeah.
like fighting amongst each other, which is ass backwards, but sure.
Yeah.
People are crazy for sure. You know, I can definitely relate to that, and you know, definitely speak on that as well. I think that and unfortunately that's in almost every culture, including
Hmm.
I was having a conversation the other day basically stating that you don't have to be white or like Mexican or like a non-black person of color to like participate in anti-blackness. You can be black,
Hmm.
right? And have this, you know, whole ideology about blackness and who we are as people in a culture and who you are and how you identify. So I just think people like need to take the time out to like examine themselves, right?
Yeah.
Really look deep into themselves, their family history, like, you know, who they're around, who they identify with, and like really look into those things, because like honestly we have more in common than we don't, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I mean, it's internalized, right? That discrimination is internalized, and like it's us against them and neighborhoods and all kinds of stuff. I was talking to somebody earlier today where he was telling me that, you know, his late mom, you know, rest in peace, that she was pretty racist. I mean, and she was Mexican, but she grew up in like an area in LA where the different communities just didn't get along, right?
yeah,
So that was that division.
yeah,
You know, and now is not a time to be doing that. Fortunately, there's social media that can kind of bring us together. I mean, that's kind of one topic I want to touch on today, but like
yeah, for sure.
there's a lot of stuff that's really bringing us together, which I think is good. So, I mean, we can just jump right in. I think a big
Sorry about
part.
my dogs in advance, I'm
Oh,
so
no,
sorry.
you're good. I think something that comes to mind is that, I mean, we were dealing with like COVID, right? And
Mhm.
I talked to, I don't know, do you know Tim Green? Tim,
I do.
yeah,
I
I love,
do.
yeah, Tim's a cool
Yes.
guy. He's been on the podcast a couple of times. And I just asked because you run in similar circles as far as like,
Yeah.
you know, advocacy, and the guy likes to protest. And so we were talking about how the COVID was just impacting minorities already disproportionately,
Yeah. Right.
especially Black people in the United
Hmm.
States due to a lack of
Hmm.
resources, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
then finally, like states start to open up, and what's the first thing that happens is, you know, we start seeing, you know, these people get killed. Even a little
Hmm.
bit before that, that guy was hunted down pretty much. He was on a
Yeah.
job. What was his name again?
Ahmaud Arbery.
Ahmad, yeah, Ahmad, and he was just on a jog and he got hunted down and shot, right? That was even before
Yeah.
everything started opening, and then things opened up, and then this happens. So, I mean, like I said, it was already happening, but were you planning on all of this? How quickly did you have to kind of get everything together and start moving?
So actually right away. So what I've
Yeah.
realized is that there's
Yeah.
a huge, especially in our community, um, there's no, a lot of people don't know specific outlets for Black people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've noticed is a lot of people have started trying to organize like Black Lives Matter protests. So it's been a nightmare in that sense of people just like, oh, like, are you associated with this? Are you associated with this? Like, did you do this? Did you not do this? So it all kind of came together fairly quickly. One of my really good friends, Nikki, she was definitely able to join the fight this time, and she's been really supportive, you know, Black women as well. And it was a little bit easier this time around because she was able to be involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, we went from the initial plan was to have this planning and have this protest this Saturday, this coming Saturday. But what we realized is that there's so much confusion going on. Like we felt like
Mm-hmm.
we really couldn't wait that long.
Yeah.
So having having to do with that, we decided like it just was important for us to move as quickly. This is not the end of organizing in general. Like I do plan on, and we both plan on being consistent in the sense of like having events effective, like immediately
Mm-hmm.
one after the other, right? Because I
Yeah.
think that that's important, and I think a lot of allies don't really understand that, like um they can go home, right? They can go home and have that. This is like a never ending. They can have that piece of being home, even non-Black people of color. But like, this is like a situation that's kind of never ending. So
Yeah.
even when I get home, even after like, you know, you plan this in such a little amount of time, I would say like maybe
Yeah.
2 to 3 days was the planning process that we had. We went from like maybe having a full week to having like 2 days.
Yeah.
But I am very well versed in that, right? Because I've done it so many times, so it
Yeah.
wasn't too crazy. It was
Mhm.
stressful, but not. It's always stressful. But I think like yeah, it definitely is always stressful. But I think that there was just a lot of confusion in the sense of like who's doing what, and for me, one something that was super important to me is that it's really problematic for people who are not Black to occupy those spaces, right?
Mhm.
So what's the point of Black Lives Matter? What is a huge point of any type of Black organizing is to highlight Black voices, right? To
Yeah.
center Black voices. And I feel like what was happening with all of these other protests and whatever vigils and things like that going on, Black people were not centered. And
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
impossible to address these issues and these problems. And it does not discredit what every other group of people go through, because obviously we're all dealing with fuck shit at the moment. So it doesn't take away from that, but I think people need to understand and really, 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 like historically, through historical context, like what we're really addressing here, right? And when you have white people and brown people centered in those spaces and Black people are not being heard, you
Yeah.
can't really find a solution or help or contribute to the problem if you're not listening. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely rough. It was definitely that planning.
It got,
Trust me,
it got
that's
crazy.
probably why I look so mean on the day of, because I was just like, it's like so much going on and so people, you know, I understand that
Mhm.
people are trying to like, um, um, find out information, but it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
read the page, like please, like you guys are, people were asking like the same in a row, like the same question, like 70 people the same question. I'm like, did you read what I said like the last 40 times? Like, and it's
Yeah.
rough. It's like, you know, you want people to have the information they need, but it's just like, come on guys, like
Yeah.
take a little tiny bit of initiative, just a tiny bit, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, I think, bringing it to Albuquerque, I think a lot of people really feel like they're just sitting on the sideline and not they can't do anything. And a lot of the time, like being able to march makes them or do something, they want to be proactive in it. And the
for
sitting
sure,
around makes them feel like they're not doing anything. So that I think that's kind of the helplessness that they're feeling.
for
So I
sure.
mean, what's regardless of their background, I mean, like what would you say is the best thing that people can do to try to make sure that they're not only highlighting people of color or Black people in this movement, but um contributing on their own.
I think you know, I actually really love this question because I've met, so, I mean, even with working with youth, I've
Yeah.
met so many people who have that urge, you know, they see the injustices, right?
Right.
And they have the urge to do absolutely anything in their power to like, you know, contribute to the fight for that. And I think, one way to like basically my dog's crying.
No, no, you're
One
good.
way to basically contribute to that, I think, is people, oh, so specifically this would go to like, I mean, I guess all communities, but like educating your community, right?
Hmm.
So I want people to take the time to think about the fact that not only is this a reality for us, and this aside from Black people, like, you know, that is the focus right now, but like this goes for communities of color, right? Black folks are dealing with this trauma and this
Hmm.
we're trying to process the violence we experience on a day-to-day basis, basically our reality. But also on top of that, we are seeing these things carried out, right? In live, you know, on television, on Facebook, we're seeing these things happen. So we're also processing that, right? We're seeing murders of our people go viral,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
we're processing that, and on top of that, we're advocating for ourselves, which is
Yeah.
extremely exhausting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like we don't have the time to sit and process, and like when we're trying, and one of the things as well is this type of thing is so consistent, right? So we have videos that are going viral,
Hmm.
but Black people are killed on a daily basis. People we don't even know about. We don't know their names. We will never hear about.
Yeah.
So I think like one of the things that I want to highlight is I think people need to realize that the communities they come from participate in anti-Blackness and white supremacy, whether they want to believe it or not. We are a functioning system, right? That's why white supremacy works.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's important that people who feel like they really want to help, it's important. It's so important in your community to address problematic behavior, racist
Mm-hmm.
behavior. You
Mm-hmm.
know, those ideologies need to go checked, because when they go unchecked, these people, these family members, for example, go out into the world, such a mess, go out into the world and basically they perpetuate, you know, those ideologies,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
if you're not correcting your family, right, you can't say you're an ally and you're a
Right.
person who cares if you're, you know, having this family gathering and all you hear about is how, like, you know, well, George Floyd should have just followed directions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is a microaggression. And those microaggressions, they have real life consequences for Black people and brown people and
Yeah.
indigenous people. So
Yeah.
it's like, if we don't, you know, on top of like protesting and donating and um, seeking out knowledge, which also on top of that, like I would say when you seek out knowledge, like do not come to Black folks for that education. Stop doing that. It is
Right.
absolutely, it does not help. I'm telling you, like, we live in 2020. Things are at your fingertips. You need to make the effort. It is absolutely not our job to educate you. And people who are saying that, you know, they really need to take a long look at historical context. Black people, to get an education, to be educated, to read, to count to 10
Yeah.
was deemed criminal. There was
Right.
consequences for these, for seeking out knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that white people and a lot of allies can come to you and say, oh, well, it's your job to educate me, is absolutely fucking insane.
Right.
Like,
Right.
that is absolutely ridiculous. We're still fighting to get in 2020 for people of color and Black folks to have equal opportunities in education.
Mm-hmm.
So the fight that we're having to have education, and people have the nerve to say, well, it's your job to educate me, that's absolute crap.
Right.
And I would tell people of color, you know, it is not your job, unless they're fucking paying you money. It is not, absolutely not your job to educate any person
Mm-hmm.
on the trauma that, one, is historical, two, is present, and will probably still be dealing with 20, 30 years, 40, maybe even 50 years from now,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
I think people need to be, you know, there's outlets. It's not like Black people are like, we're in this like secret community and you can't, there's not any type of education or knowledge that we have you just can't tap into.
Right.
No, that's not it, you know. And I'm telling you, with, especially with your Black friends, it does more harm than good.
Yeah.
So stop reaching out to them. We're grieving, we're mourning, we're trying to process, we're trying to like keep it together, and asking us like, well, tell me what I can do, or tell me how, you know, myself, putting myself in a space where I am organizing. Yeah, I understand that that comes with that space, right? But like people who are grieving and mourning, like, come on guys, like as allies, you've got to do better. You and a part of that is listening, right? You can listen, and from listening comes like, oh hey, maybe while this person is traumatized by seeing a grown-ass man cry out for his mother while he's being murdered, like while we're processing that trauma, like maybe it's not such a good idea for me to say, well, send me some links to how I can like look up the history of like lynchings in America. Like that is just so traumatic and
So it's, I
ridiculous. And
mean, like,
guys,
so know your audience and know your timing, folks. I mean, come on. People straight
yeah,
up just like coming to you and being like, yeah,
agent,
yeah,
you know, agency, we have agency, guys. Like you say you have the privilege to do so many things, and it's just like so mind-blowing to me that we still live in a day and an age where people like they justify their racism and things like that by saying, well, I don't know, so how about you tell me? Well, you know what,
mm,
how about you go Google it? Like Google, you have a full ass computer in your back pocket, like pull your phone out and
yeah,
Google it, and you know, do some research. It's there, it's not hidden information. So yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely a frustrating.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could totally understand that. I think a big part of, you know, part of my job is having, you know, I'm an advocate for people at work. I'm in charge of the multicultural group in my
Mm.
employee resource group at my company. So I oversee different offices, and anything having to do with culture, and it's labeled essentially all things people of color come through me, right? So,
Yeah.
and I, it, for me, at least in my position, a lot of the time it is exhausting. So if I'm just like, you know what, like I put it aside, and if I don't have the energy for it, I'll be like, you know what, let's
Yeah.
talk about it another time. But
Yeah.
because I personally decided to take on that role, if somebody doesn't learn it right, at least within the context of my job, then it's my fault.
Yeah.
Um, then I'm complicit in them potentially learning it incorrectly,
Yeah. For
right?
sure.
Right, and I
Hmm.
think that's something that I don't want. But at the same time, yeah, like people need to know their audience, and they do have Google. And if after everything that you've looked at, you want to have a conversation, then hit me up, and then we
Yeah.
can chat, we can have a discussion, we can do whatever you want. But yeah, like it's like it's the idea. You brought up a good point. It's the idea that they can't do it for themselves when they've had the privilege to educate themselves this whole time, right?
Exactly.
And I think a big part of, I wanted to kind of go down the route of the riots and everything that's happening, quote
Hmm.
unquote riots, right?
Yeah.
Is that along the lines of education, is the fact that
Hmm.
a lot of these communities have not had adequate access to education or
Yeah.
resources or funding or anything like that. And when they don't have representation in office, they don't have a voice, right?
Yeah.
So the
Hmm.
only way they're going to get attention or eyes on them from the media or for anybody is when you start doing stuff like this, because now the world's paying attention, right?
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, so now that you're paying attention, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
The sad thing is that it takes all of this to happen for people to start listening,
Yeah. For
right?
sure.
And then
Hmm.
that's not something that's it shouldn't have gotten to this point in the first place, right? What do you think happened between the last time you're doing these marches and then now? Like, where was the gap? We should have been so much further. I mean, I
I
hope so.
agree. I
Right.
think, yeah, I agree. I think times are definitely shifting, but I also think, to me, any innocent person murdered is going to be brutal
Mm-hmm.
and inhumane. But I think for a lot of people who are not familiar with that type of reality, I think that I think the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud, um,
Yeah.
I think people realize like how gruesome and
Right.
um, how just like dehumanizing, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that I mean, obviously all of these are dehumanizing for me personally. Like there's not one case that I'm aware of or that has happened that I don't grieve or mourn or
Yeah.
have some type of
Yeah.
emotional reaction to, just because I'm just, that's a reality. I have brothers who look like these kids who are dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a dad, I have uncles and things like that. So I think what shifted, I think what's gotten us here is I think people are starting to see how brutal and dehumanizing and violent these things are, right?
Yeah.
Like we're
Yeah.
watching it in real time, and we've been watching it, right? We've been watching these things take place, but it's like, I'm very thankful for that shift in culture and thought process, because nowadays a lot of people are not dealing with this crap, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
nowadays there's a lot of people who, allies and people like that, and even just black people and brown people who are like vocally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was consequences for speaking against the system and quote unquote your master and things like that, and there was real life consequences. There's still real life consequences for people of color, but I think as far as like white allies go, I think and people, I it's so hard, and it's such a, I feel like it's, in a sense it's like a really simple question, but at the same time I feel like it's kind of really complex,
Okay.
in the sense that like people are just tired
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People are just exhausted. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted. I'm tired. I'm like tired of like processing and then getting over that, right? And like trying to like become like, all right, like I process what's happening. This is horrible. Like I'm hurting. My brothers and sisters are hurting. And then processing that. But like right after that, it's like another situation happening, right? And I think people were just drained and people have had enough, especially like this community of allies and Black people and brown people, like all of us together. I think we're just tired of seeing this. We're
Yeah.
tired of,
Yeah.
and even in the sense of justice, like justice is not being served. It
No.
is absolute, a payout to a family is, that's not justice.
No.
Those types of things. And I think that that's the thing, like, the fact that this man was murdered and which a lot of them do, this police officer went home, right?
Hmm.
And the state sanctioned violence happens, and the state protects these individuals,
Hmm.
and I think at some point, if not now, this type of incident was going to happen eventually, right?
Hmm.
Because you can only perpetuate and show people that type of violence and trauma so many times, into where I personally believe you do one of two things: you snap,
Hmm.
right? You snap, you claim your community and you do things like that, and you rise up and things like that, or you give up.
Okay.
Those are the one of two things that can happen. And I think a lot of people right now are just tired, right?
Yeah.
We're just tired of processing. We're tired of seeing it. We're tired of the lack of justice. We're tired of like just the violence, and like this is, it should not be happening.
Hmm.
Absolutely, there's no excuse, there's no justification for this type of thing to play out and there not be immediate action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think at some point, if not now, it was going to happen. I just think that how the George Floyd, before that Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud,
Right.
how those situations played out. I think with George Floyd and just the dehumanization of that specific,
Hmm.
they're all dehumanizing, but like having that on camera, having a 17-year-old Black child record that, right?
Hmm.
And just watching this man, like, I it hit people. It hit
Yeah.
people in a different sense. And like I say, even as a speaking out of the context of race, right? Because people always like to say it's not about race. Um, to speak out of the context of race, like you cannot be a human being and
Right.
watch that and justify or like have no emotion towards that. If
Right.
you do, you need help. Something is wrong with you. That's not normal,
That's not normal.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that George Floyd was just definitely a cherry on the top.
Yeah.
It broke the straw that broke the camel's back, and people are just like, fuck it. Like clearly they've continuously shown us they don't care. So
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just perpetuating the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's exhausting. So, I mean, it's, I personally don't know what to do. Like, I feel like exhausted and I don't know if it's going to get better or like what needs to happen. Like, what
mhm,
do we need? I keep seeing all kinds of stuff, right? Because I saw something along the lines of just like these guys were trained, right? It's
yeah,
these guys are trained to do this. There's no training on rioting. There's no handbook. So you just do it, right?
yeah,
But there's a handbook on how to like arrest people and how to be a cop. But these guys are still doing what they're doing, and they know they're being recorded, right? So if you got caught doing something you're not supposed to be doing recorded,
yeah,
you'd stop, you'd freak out, and you'd be like, "What?" But these guys don't care. They keep doing it, and then you're seeing all this stuff on social media now, right? With the protests and all this stuff. I mean, you're seeing this footage of cops essentially setting people up, right?
yep,
You see
wow,
piles of
yeah,
bricks. You see them kind of bashing their own cars in, spray painting
hmm,
things. I saw one today of the LAPD just driving around a neighborhood, tear gassing people, just randomly walking down the street. And you're wondering like what's going through their heads, right? Because I
hmm,
posted stuff on Facebook this week, and I have friends who are cops, and I knew them before. like in
Yeah.
college, and we were like taking the same classes, and we didn't talk about this stuff at all. But
Yeah.
they immediately see me talking about Black Lives Matter, and they're like, "Why do you hate cops?" And I'm like, "What does one have to do with the other?"
Yeah.
Like, that's not just because I'm black. I'm supporting Black Lives Matter. It doesn't mean I hate the police.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think we need reform?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I think we need maybe to kind of look at how we're funding
Mm-hmm.
these operations and militarizing our police
Mm-hmm.
and our government as a whole? Yeah, I think that, that I don't think that's right. But do I personally dislike police officers on an individual level, like objectively? No. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't, right? I've had my own personal experiences with them, and that's what makes up my opinion about them. But like,
Yeah.
why, what is it in your opinion that these people just can't see the fact that like one thing has nothing to do with the other? Like, they come at you with like, no, blue lives or all lives matter.
Yeah. So, um, this is like a completely this when people come at like it's a complete deflective argument. People don't want to take accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are officers. I mean, there was an officer who put out a whole video. He was like, "This is absolutely wrong." Right? He sorry, it's like a million phone calls.
Oh, you're good.
But he was absolutely wrong. He's like, there's policies, there's like guidelines in place for these types of situations, and he did not follow any of those guidelines. So I think for me, okay, so I'll state for me, I think with police officers, if you're not actively taking a stance against the violence that
Mm-hmm.
you see and the wrong that you see perpetuated within your department and your community of police officers or whatever you want to call it, then you are absolutely a part of the problem.
Yeah.
You are 100%. All those officers that stood while that man was being murdered, they all need to be held accountable, because
Mm-hmm.
what that man did was inappropriate, it was wrong, and there were people there, there were officers there who could have avoided this whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
That man could have been alive today if they would have stepped in, and they didn't. So they are absolutely a part of the problem and need to be held accountable. So I think with a lot of people is they want to, it's a deflection. It's not really looking out accountability, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, I feel the same. So people have to understand the context behind why Black people are being murdered by police, because right, all lives matter, right? White people will say, oh, police kill white people all the time. People have to understand the context is different, right?
Right.
There's a historical background behind why Black people are dying in America, why Indigenous people are dying in America,
Mm-hmm.
why Mexican people are dying and being kept in cages in America. There's historical background there.
Mm-hmm.
So that is still present, right? It's ongoing, it's lingering. So I think with these people, we're confronting their privilege, right? We're confronting a
Oh, yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
We're confronting something that it makes them very, very uncomfortable. And they like I said, there's no accountability. They don't want to acknowledge
Mm.
what's happening, right? They
Okay.
think when Black people say Black Lives Matter, or people say Black Lives Matter, they think it's a direct attack on, which obviously they have to work on themselves if that's how they feel. They think it's a direct attack on them, right? They think it's a direct attack on who
Right.
they are as people. And that's my thing is like centering themselves. It's not about you. It's not about
Yeah.
it. There are police officers, there are people who understand the context, right? So they're not running around saying all lives matter or saying Black Lives Matter, but so I think with those people, I think they're uncomfortable and they're afraid of losing this sense of privilege, right? They're afraid of having to give up being comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
If police just started killing white people, like, are you kidding me? People would wild the fuck out. And that's what I'm saying is like, there's always this like false like statistic or like narrative that we're not aware, we're not aware of good people, and we're not aware. That's not enough anymore though. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing is just, we're in a space where you have to decide, like you said, you base your thoughts and views on police based off of personal experiences, right?
Yeah.
And that would obviously vary, right? Because
Right.
my experiences with police have been garbage. Every single last one of them has been garbage. So obviously I'm going to have some type of,
Hmm.
feeling towards police officers. At the end of the day, right at this moment, my sister is in training to be a New Mexico State police officer.
Yeah.
And my sister absolutely knows that I do not support the foundation of police.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't support that foundation, because like I said, there's historical context there that is lingering. It's
Hmm.
carried on. It didn't just stop. And, it didn't. And my sister understands that. She's aware of that. She knows exactly what is going on, and I know that she is not the type of person to see some type of violence take place and for her to just stand there. Like, she
Yeah.
will absolutely, she's a black woman, like, she experiences the shit she knows. So it's
Hmm.
just like, I think it's just a deflection argument. I truly believe that people, and that's a privilege in itself, to basically just disregard life as a whole, right?
Yeah.
And I think that people, like I said, people. Sorry, did I lose you?
A little bit.
Like,
Yeah. I think
sorry,
when something pops up
I
on your phone, you lose me a
apologize.
little bit. Yeah.
As a whole, like, it's not centered around you. It's not about you. You have to look at what's going on. You have to look at the situation. And if you can literally look at, like, what happens to Black people and say, like, but oh, my counter argument for Black people is Black Lives Matter. I mean, well, my counter argument for Black Lives Matter is Blue Lives Matter. And people also have to understand that that is a choice,
Hmm.
right? Nobody forced people. Nobody
Nobody's born
forced
blue.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly. I can't go home and change who I am, right? Black people
Hmm.
don't have that choice. Brown people do not have that. We can't just give up our struggle when we're like, all right, this is a bit much. Like,
It's not a 9 to
let's
5, right?
exactly, like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm home. Let me just be my white self. Like, that's not something that happens. And I think people
Right.
equate those two things, like, and the context, they don't know the historical context behind that. So they're like, well, blue police officers put their lives on the line every day. That was a choice.
Yeah.
That was a choice. And if you cannot do your job correctly, you have no business being a police officer.
Right.
Period, point blank. If this whole idea that, like, police officers are scared for their lives, why are you a police officer?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a choice. It is a choice that you make. And that argument is, like, to me personally, irrelevant. When people tell me that, it just shows me their character. I'm like, obviously you are not in touch with what's going on. You have no background. You have no knowledge of, like,
Like
the
race and
history.
discrimination and
Yeah,
all that
like,
stuff.
you're
Yeah.
delusional. It would be different if we were all, like, the same fucking color, and, like, we were having this conversation and police were like, that would be a different conversation. But there's history behind there. Black people just didn't start getting killed by police in 2015.
Yeah.
This is something that the state sanctioned violence has been approved. We had a point in time and we are seeing it happen again with Trump in presidency. He is giving them the go ahead
Hmm.
to carry out these acts, right?
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
public doctrine, in public domains, in front of people, right? We're no longer in a space where it's more, I mean, obviously systemic racism is a thing, but, like, that's the thing, is a lot of people think it's like this person, right? Let's
Hmm.
get rid of racism and we can pull out this individual. No, it's
Like getting
in
rid of
our
him is, yeah.
foundation.
Yeah. It's not
Yeah,
him. It's not him. He's just like a part of it, but it's bigger, right? And it's
he's
like,
like a little tiny, like, the fire's going out and he's just like a little tiny match
hmm,
that, just sets it ablaze a little bit more. And I think
hmm,
that's what people have to understand, is there's like parts that operate in this whole system as a whole. And, like,
yeah.
I definitely think people who, to sum it up, I definitely think people who use those arguments are just really uneducated, and they have the privilege to not be educated. It's not a reality they will ever experience.
Hmm.
And it's just deflection. It's basically discrediting the trauma we are experiencing and seeing and feeling. And they don't know how to deal with not being comfortable, so that's their deflection, right? to
Mm-hmm.
create this counter argument that doesn't even exist. It's not even a thing. It's not comparable. So yeah, I think that that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with, like I said, people that I know, and one friend from a long time ago, her husband's a cop, and she was like, "Do you think all what do you think all cops are bad?" And I said, "No." So I mean, she's like, "Well, there are good ones out there." I said, "That's not the problem. Like, there's good ones, but there's some jobs. I think Chris Rock said it right. But some jobs can't have a few bad apples. They just can't,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah.
American Airlines saying some of our pilots just can't land planes. It's fine. Like,
Our bad.
no, yeah, it's like you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that, and they should know better. There should be, and if something like that does happen, there should be recourse, right? Legal recourse.
Yeah.
It shouldn't come to people protesting and rioting in the streets for somebody to do something about it. It shouldn't get that bad to people do something
Yeah.
about it, right? Just because they're worried
Yeah.
about bad PR, bad press,
Hmm.
or this or that, because that's all it really is. They don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, you see cops kneeling in the streets and then immediately firing tear gas right after the
What are
journalist
you
hits.
doing? Like, oh
Like, yeah,
my.
you're just like really like they're doing it for the photo op, right? They're doing it for the photo op and then just go on about their
All
business.
right, we got to get back to business, guys.
Yeah, and I'm just like, are you kidding me, man? Like, it's like, is social media helping or is it not?
It's, it's a mess. I think that for one, like,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you. I think that like, I think people who support these systems should blame themselves. If
Mhm.
you're upset about things being tore the fuck up, I personally believe that like you definitely should blame yourself,
Yeah.
because if you really cared about your businesses and things like that, like you would automatically like be with us. Like that would be, this is, why would you ever think that people would not have a response to this?
Uh-huh.
Like, you know what I mean? And I think that
Yeah.
that's because they think people have been so complacent for so long, right? They want people to normalize this, right? They want people
Mhm.
to, I would never normalize this. And I think with social media, I think for sure, like, it can definitely be a positive and a negative, right? And I'm seeing that here in Albuquerque, with all of these like events being organized, right? They
Mhm.
have this media platform, and I understand people wanting to be connected and do something, and I get that, but like it has created a lot of confusion, and like it's crazy because people don't understand that. They're just kind of like, oh well, I didn't know, or I think social media is extremely powerful in the sense of like passing along information, like even
Mhm.
with George Floyd, like that was, I mean, there's so many things that have happened that have been recorded, and the only reason why people care about it is because it went viral, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
this consistent sharing, but also there's like a lot of things that are wrong with social media in the sense of in that aspect. So I don't know if you've seen this, basically like Blackout Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so people are, and that's the thing, is a lot of people want to be a part of something, but sometimes they're not listening as to what like that consists of, right?
Mhm.
So they just do things because they see other people doing it. And I think that's a huge issue with social media, is this like trending, right? You want to be involved, you want to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know exactly what they're getting into. So it's like that apparently that movement that they were trying to do, it just like backfired, because
Mhm.
what ended up happening is there's all these people posting these blackout photos with Blackout Tuesday, hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag BLM. And what that does is and the way the algorithms are set up is it's going to push back important information that people who are on.
It literally blacks everything out.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And a lot of people didn't know that. A lot of people, I mean, I
Yeah.
posted the other day, and it's really funny because I didn't include the hashtag like Black Lives Matter or anything like that, but I was actually reading an article as I like posted that, right?
Mhm.
And I'm just like, it makes absolute sense that this does more harm than good, right? We
Mhm.
want people, and we don't, on top of that, we don't control those platforms, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's a group of people who maybe their like algorithm is like cats and dogs and like cooking, and maybe like basketball, and maybe like
Yeah, because
I
when
don't
I'm
know.
browsing, I don't see a bunch of black stuff. Like, like I just
See,
see like all this other stuff, right?
and it's like, so exactly, so they specifically cater to like what you're trying to visually see, right? So
Hmm.
people who have no idea what's going on, and there are people who are oblivious to the reality of violence, right? In that aspect, like they
Right.
have no clue. They're like, I've had people tell me like, I didn't realize it was this bad, and I'm like, what? You didn't realize it was bad when Ayanna Taylor, 7-year-old girl, was shot in the head by
Right.
a full-on SWAT team busted into her house. So it's just like, there are people who are not they're not connected with that reality.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the problem with social media is, one, people are really quick to join things and they have no clue
Yeah.
what's going on. They
Yeah.
just want to be a part of something. And I think that that's super problematic. And we have a lot of issues because of that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I think we don't control those platforms. So like,
Right.
I can post stuff. I mean, like, I literally was on Twitter for all of 5 seconds.
In general, you mean ever?
Well, I've had Twitter since 2010, but I've literally never used it. But like,
Okay.
people have like been hyped. I'm like the queen of dragging people. So people are like, you have to have Twitter because like you
Yeah,
will have
because
a,
you straight up do. Like, how many
yes,
times have
it's
you
a
been
free
banned on
for all.
Facebook? How many times have you been banned
Oh
on
my,
Facebook and
I
Instagram?
cannot, like, it's very funny. So Facebook, I can't even use the word white.
Shut
Like,
up.
my profile, I'm telling, it's not even a fucking joke. I wish I was joking. My profile is flagged. So basically what happens if I can't use white, I can't use YT. I've literally resorted to using mayo. Like, that's what I can use. So I've resorted to using that because I honestly, any little fucking thing I post, I will get banned for 3 months. Like, dead
You can't
ass.
use, so you can't be like quote unquote anti-white is what they're trying
I
to tell
can't
you.
yes. And it's
Jeez.
funny because I've had people threaten my life on there. And they're
Oh no,
like,
for sure.
this,
Yeah.
this, it's not catered to people of color. Those platforms, I mean, they provide a space, but they're not like for, like, if someone's racist, they're not denying like racist ideologies. They're not like canceling out like donations from racist people. Like, they don't fucking care. So it's just like, I'm definitely a target on Facebook. So people were like, Nikki, like, you just gotta do Twitter. Like, Twitter, you could, like, it's a free for all. And I'm just like, I love that because I can't do shit on Facebook at this point because I've definitely like worn out my welcome on there. Like, they definitely hate me. So I get Twitter. I was on Twitter and like I said, I've had a Twitter account since 2010, but it's so complicated for me. I don't understand what's happening. I get frustrated and I'm like, delete. So
Yeah.
I've just never processed like any of that. And people are just like, just give it a chance. Like, you'll get used to it. But it's so funny. So I'm like on there for I'm telling you, like 5 seconds, and I'm already on a 12-hour ban.
Shut up, really?
And I'm just like, how's this work? Like, they don't give you a warning? Like, I don't even get a warning? Like,
What'd you
no,
say? What'd you say? What'd you do?
so
John
John
Bones
Bone
Jones.
Jones,
Yeah.
I can't even, he's a moron. He's absolutely a moron. And
Yeah.
I called him out basically, like, I was basically like, you're, I won't say what the language I used on there, but I basically told him, like, you're downtown acting like you're cleaning up. I'm like, don't you have 500 hours of community service? Like, and then I told him, I'm like,
I mean, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, wait, isn't he like on probation right now?
so you didn't show up armed to clean up looting. You didn't show up armed to clean up looting where there were still actually people down there trying to spray paint and like kids down there trying to do shit. But you show up to a peaceful protest about your own people
Yeah.
armed in camouflage with all these fucking morons. One, you let them disrespect me. Two, you say you tell me you're protecting property. That was he asked for the platform, right? And I was just so exhausted. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, they let him have it. I didn't even fight it because I was so exhausted from the evening and just dealing
Mm-hmm.
with morons and he gets up there and all he says is, well, thanks for not looting, guys. And I'm like, so black people are dying. Your people, my people, they're dying. And
Yeah.
you're here to protect property.
Yeah.
So I called him out and like, I'm assuming he reported me. And like I couldn't even finish the other, because obviously I was like ranting, but I couldn't even finish the other text. I told him like, you're a sellout. Like you're a
Yeah.
sellout. Like you're a little monkey. Like you're a little tap dancing monkey for them. Like that's what you're doing. And I'm like, weren't you just a criminal? Like weren't they just calling you a criminal? And you guys are shaking hands on video. Like,
Dude, like, no, he straight up, he just got a DWI like a couple months ago. You know,
dude,
another one,
the
like another
police were
one.
like, he's a criminal. The white folks in this community were like calling for him to be murdered. And now he's
Really? I
like,
didn't know it was that
I'm
bad.
gonna protect the streets for everybody. Like, and police were calling him criminal, like saying there needs to be consequences. And now he's all like shaking hands with them and I was so upset. I'm like, this is disgusting. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, you should absolutely be. And someone asked me, because somebody else was like arguing with me about the situation, and I'm just like, are you serious? Like, they were
Yeah.
like, well, there should be room for atonement, right? And I'm tired of that shit.
I mean,
Like,
this guy keeps messing up though. Like, this guy keeps messing up. Like, I know a woman that he harassed at a strip club here in town, and I'm just like, dude, like, really? You know?
like, grow up. You're a grown ass man. Like,
Yeah.
grow
Yeah.
up. And that's my thing. I'm like, clearly no one's providing him with they care about money. They're focused on money. Nobody is providing, and also he's in the middle of a contract renegotiation, so of course.
So
But like,
yeah. Yeah.
nobody's providing him with the like help that he actually needs.
Right.
It's about money. And so like for me, I'm just the type of person, I'm gonna call you out. And like, I hate that
Yeah.
there's this culture that's like, well, if it's a black person and you're black, like you have to stand by them no matter what. No, people do shit that's
Mm,
wrong. And I will tell you right now,
yeah.
those people don't ever hesitate to try to drag me.
Oh
So,
no,
and
no.
I'm the first person to admit when I'm wrong. I'm absolutely the first person. I don't think I know everything, but like at the end of the day, I'm like, I have all of these people who like should be more in tune with their community right now. And it's just like, well, he's doing the right thing. And I'm like, okay, like delete yourself, because I'll delete you, whatever needs to happen. Yeah, so I think social media,
Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah. It's just crazy.
it
It's
could
yeah.
get really wild. It's
I
like,
mean, so I, when people of color start talking down about the situation or the movement in general or any movement, my response is just like, well, you know what? Like, racism can be internalized, and you can self-oppress and self-discriminate, right?
of
And that's what
course,
they're doing. I
absolutely.
saw OBJ make a comment about like white silence isn't necessarily bad, so it could be okay. And I'm just like, what? I was like, no, dude.
Seriously?
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing it, yeah, but it was along those lines, and somebody was just like, "See, like it's okay, like we don't have to, like it's okay if I don't feel like it." I'm like,
I've seen you're like,
and I'm like,
mm-hmm.
"No, dude." I commented, I was like, "Well, that shit can be internalized too,
For sure.
because it's
Like,
true. Like if I'm protecting the other side, it's because I think that they're right, and I'm discriminating against myself, and I'm putting myself below them, you know." And
that's a conversation that people don't want to have, for sure.
oh no, no, I think it's just,
Oh,
yeah, it's like it's the whole, yeah. I see. I did it when, I don't know, when one of these fools was coming to in 2016, was coming to talk at UNM, and then some Mexican guy was just like, my family came here and worked hard and
was
this
it
and that.
Milo?
Milo was here.
Fuck his bitch ass.
Yeah, when Milo was here, and he was just like, we work hard and we can do this and we can do anything. I was like, dude, I feel bad for you, bro. I just
Because
told him,
you're struggling,
I was
man.
like, you're just struggling, man. Like, yeah, exactly that, dude.
That's definitely been like a continuous argument too. It's like, there's a lot of people who are of like Mexican descent and like, a Mexican American who are basically like, oh, my family came here and worked hard. It's not about black people. And I'm just like, dead ass, like you're fucking racist as shit. Like
Yeah.
you
Yep.
are like,
Yeah.
you're anti-black. And like, I had a whole conversation with this girl. Like, well, I didn't have a conversation. Like I
Talked
got
at her.
pissed. Yeah, for sure. Because it was like this whole conversation. And like for me, like I said, when it comes to like obliterating oppression, bruh, I'm an equal opportunist. Like on any level, on
Yeah.
fucking any level, like let's get it. And I
Yeah.
told her, obviously, I do not agree with people being in cages. Like, because they were, and that's what kills me. It's like, they don't want us, like the situation shouldn't be valid with us, right? Like our deaths are not important, but then they throw this like counter arguments like, well, where y'all gonna like, when are you guys going to tear down concentration camps? And I'm like, but y'all aren't even willing to like riot, like quote unquote riot. Like y'all are
Yeah.
not even really to be in the streets with us, and you dead ass. And like I said, I have no problem. I am like solidarity. My mom is Mexican. So obviously that's a part of my identity, and I do not agree with what's happening. But at the same time, you can't use that situation to
No.
deflect or like
No. Yep.
desensitize yourself to what's going on. It's like
Right.
we're all hurting, and it's just like, and I personally am a true firm believer, you know, people don't understand the anti-blackness across cultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are people of color who can participate in literally hating, like to gain some type of like sameness with this like other, right?
Mm-hmm.
To create that type of relationship, they totally will group themselves in discriminating against Black people, right?
Yeah.
And I am a firm, the type of like system that exists against Black people around the world, not just in America. All Blackness, anti-Blackness is like, it extends, it's global.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to so many places in the world and they will literally like let you know like we don't like Black people.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think with that being said, like I'm a firm believer, like I think if Black people can get liberation, everything will follow. Things will follow after
Yeah.
that. And I think I'm exhausted because I lend myself out to every type of issue like
Mm-hmm.
out there, and I feel like Black people, we don't get the same response. Like people
No.
are not willing to fight for Black people the way Black people are willing to fight for everybody else, and it's just like, it's exhausting. And it was hurtful. Like I was so hurtful. I'm like, of all people, like you should fucking get it. Of all people, you should understand the
Yeah.
type of trauma we're dealing with. But right now you want to take this time to say, well, my family worked hard, and like,
Mm-mm.
she went along the lines of saying like something along the lines of saying basically like basically they're well behaved, right? Like
Right. What's like there's the when people say like there's the right way to do things. I mean, you're trying to say there's a white way to do things, right?
exactly, like let's be clear. Yeah,
This is what you're trying to say. This is what you're
yeah.
trying to say.
Let me help you out. Let's clarify.
Yeah, and you're right. There's a myth about it. I mean, even in Mexico, it's there's people believe it. They believe that like, oh, there's no Black people in Mexico.
I'm like,
I'm like,
get the fuck out of
I'm like, dude, have you looked
bruh.
at most people in southern Mexico? Like straight up. And there was an Afro-Mexican class given at UNM, and I used to teach in the like right in the same classroom right after this woman. And I would ask her questions just randomly. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, what's this? What's that? And she gave me like this funny stat saying like, yeah, it's a lot of people don't believe that there's any African American people or Afro Mexicans or anything like that. They're just darks. They're just morenos, right? They're just dark skin.
Yeah.
They're just real tan. But so she said somewhere along the lines of 95% of Mexican people have African ancestry. And they just
They
don't.
don't want to talk about it.
They don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about it because, or even Jewish ancestry, and they don't talk about it either, because they're just like, no, they want to be French, they want to be Spanish, right?
Why though? Like Black culture is so beautiful. Like
I know.
I'm so sick of people like y'all really like.
Yeah, I get it. I
Lord.
get it. We're the same. So we could go on and on. Are you having any more events? Where can people go and support before we jump off? Because we both have to wrap up here soon. But
yeah. So there is a Black Lives Matter page on Facebook. You can literally just type in Black Lives Matter ABQ. There's a donation link. We actually have two donation links. One's a PayPal and one's a Venmo. The Venmo, so we're basically trying to distribute funds between bail funds and mutual funds, basically. So the Venmo one is we're gonna try to like keep that at bail, but I mean everything helps, everything, you know, whatever. There's also the Freedom Fund that you guys, the Minneapolis Freedom Fund, that you can donate to. We have an Instagram page as well. It's the same thing. It's Black Lives Matter ABQ. You just look that up. If you have any questions, you comments, anything, we can help you from there. As far as organizing goes, we do have plans to within the next few weeks, there's probably going to be a lot of like events going on. We're trying to let the people who, because obviously there are organizers here who, outside of Black Lives Matter, who organize for Black lives, who are Black people. We obviously support and sponsor their events in the sense of like,
Okay.
yeah, advocating for that. So we're kind of just letting a little of these like the randomness, like all these organizations who are trying to capitalize off of, for seriously dead ass, capitalize off of the you know, pain and suffering of Black folks and benefit and profit for their own agenda. Yeah, so we're letting those people do what they're doing right now, right? And like, you can always ask us and let us know if we're associated with it or if we have any idea,
Yeah.
and we'll definitely let you know. But we definitely have some more events coming up and planned. And
Okay.
like I said, I think people need to donate and educate themselves and educate their communities and use their privilege, use your privilege. And most importantly, listen to Black people. Like, we experience it. It's our experience. We know.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do as an ally is just literally shut the fuck up and listen.
No, that's good. That's true. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. Before we log off real quick, any words of wisdom to the masses?
I would say like, what I have to say is like, I just want the people who are experiencing the trauma to know like that their anger is valid.
Yeah.
Their emotions are valid. Like, you know, human life will always be more valid than and valued than property.
Yeah.
You know, so I want people to know that they're right in their feelings. Like, I think there's just a lot of stuff going on, and I think people get put in a space where like they feel wrong, right? They feel wrong for like acting, and they feel wrong for like, you know, they feel like they're doing something wrong. You're not. Like, we're valid in expressing how we're feeling and processing, and honestly, just be involved as much as you can. Like, no matter what end you're on, just be involved. Like, we need to support each other, and we need to stand united. Like, division is one of the things that keeps us complacent in these systems, right?
Yeah.
When we're divided and we're, you know, we're like, I have this problem and you have that problem. It's similar, but we're going to talk about like what we don't have in common.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we definitely need to just stay united. And honestly, like I said, we're valid. We're valid in how we're feeling and what we're going through. And I hear you and I see you.
Yeah.
And if they don't figure it out, we're going to figure it out for them. So
yeah. That's all you can do. All right.
Yep.
I'm going to hit stop record here, then we can debrief real quick. But if you all are listening, thank you so much. Make sure to go out there and support, and let us know if you have any questions.